Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
On today's show, Iran's president is feared dead after a helicopter crash. We'll find out what that means for the country, the region and the rest of the world. Plus, Diddy apologises for assaulting a former girlfriend, but only after CCTV footage appeared. New South Wales Police reveal horrifying details about a domestic violence incident in Lismore. And PR guru to the stars Max Markson joins me to talk about the brand value of AFL young gun Harley Reid. And we'll end the show today with some bad news for Maroons supporters. In our top story today, the Iranian president feared dead.
Iran's president, Ibrahim Raisi, has died in a helicopter crash.
Iranian state media has reported that President Ebrahim Raisi, along with Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and other officials, have died in a helicopter crash in the country's East Azerbaijan province. A total of 9 people, including the Iranian officials and crew members, were killed in the crash, according to Sabreen News, which is a media organisation affiliated with Iranian-backed militias. Mr. Raisi and Amir Abdollahian were travelling in heavy fog after visiting a dam on the country's border with Azerbaijan when the helicopter suffered what state media described as a hard landing on Sunday local time. State media said images from the site showed the helicopter crashed into a mountain peak, although there was no official word yet on the cause of the crash. Raisi, who was 63 years old, was elected president in 2021 and widely seen as the choice of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei after a career in Iran's judiciary. As a prosecutor and at the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, he sat on the committee that sentenced thousands of political prisoners to death. Those executions earned him the nickname the Butcher of Tehran and subsequently subjected him to sanctions by the United States and to condemnation by the United Nations and international human rights organisations. As president, he's overseen a tightening of morality laws, violent crackdowns on anti-government protests and Iran's first direct attack on Israel. An 86-member council of clerics known as the Assembly of Experts selects the supreme leader while the public elects the president, the second highest official in Iran. The president runs day-to-day governance but is subordinate to the supreme leader, who holds the strongest financial, political, social and religious power in the country. Raisi had been floated as a potential successor to Ayatollah Khamenei, the current supreme leader. But his death means that the supreme leader has lost a long-time loyalist and regime insider. Under the Iranian constitution, any death of a president results in the first vice president serving as interim president. In this case, that would mean Mohammad Mokbar, who is a politician very much in the mould of Raisi and who has been a prominent member of the Iran team negotiating weapons deals with Moscow. Iran would also have to hold presidential elections within 50 days. To maintain control, conservatives in Tehran could increase repression and persecution domestically after the death of Raisi and also pursue confrontations with traditional enemies such as Israel.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you got to do that. I was up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
Sean Diddy Coombs is a waste of oxygen, as was the pathetic apology he offered today for physically assaulting his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura in 2016 at the now-closed Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. The rapper and powerful music industry figure issued an apology via social media, but only after CCTV footage of the assault emerged. He said that his behaviour on that video is inexcusable. He said that he takes full responsibility for his actions in that video. He's disgusted, and he was disgusted when he did it, and he's disgusted now. It seems as though Diddy's understanding of the phrase "take full responsibility" has a direct correlation with the existence of video evidence. You see, months before the CCTV footage appeared, Ventura filed a lawsuit against Coombs alleging years of physical abuse, which included an allegation of the assault at the Intercontinental Hotel. The day after it was filed, Coombs, via his lawyer, said he vehemently denies these offensive and outrageous outrageous allegations. The following day, he settled the lawsuit, but his lawyer stated that the settlement was in no way an admission of wrongdoing. Since that lawsuit in November, Coombs has faced 5 other civil lawsuits alleging a variety of sexual misconduct and other illegal activity. In December, Diddy took to Instagram to repeat his denials. Sickening allegations have been made against me, he posted, by individuals looking for a quick payday. Let me be absolutely clear, he said. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged. I will fight for my name, my family, and for the truth. To be clear, these civil cases are still before the courts and no guilt or innocence has been established, which entitles Coombs to deny any allegation against him. But we can say in the case of his assault of Ventura, the dude is despicable and uses his position of power to further victimise the woman he attacked. If there's a lesson from Coombs, it's that perpetrators find it all too easy to use the legal system to pile more abuse on victims. The Guardian reported today that family lawyers are leaving the field because of the stress of working in a system that all too often re-traumatises victims. Fixing that system is not going to be easy, but it has to be part of the solution if we're going to do something about Australia's DV crisis.
The bodies of a man and 2-year-old boy have been discovered inside a home on the state's far north coast. Police had to force their way inside a unit at Lismore late last night, called there due to concerns for the welfare of the man and his son.
A father has killed his toddler son during an access visit in a horrifying domestic violence murder-suicide in northern New South Wales. New South Wales Deputy Commissioner Peter Thurtle today confirmed police were called to an East Lismore residence on Sunday morning after the mother of the 2-year-old raised the alarm when her boy was not returned to her at the end of a custody visit. Police confirmed the 38-year-old father had been the subject of a domestic violence order. Deputy Commissioner Thurtle said the man was known to police for previous domestic violence matters, but he described them as not significant issues. He said detectives are aware of how the father and son died and there was no weapon involved. A crime scene has been established overnight and inquiries into the deaths are now underway under Strikeforce Maroons. A report will be prepared for the coroner. The tragedy came on the same day New South Wales Police announced they'd made more than 550 arrests in a domestic violence crackdown under Operation Amarok. If you're facing mental health challenges, you can always call Lifeline on 131114. And if you or someone you know needs help from domestic violence, contact 1800-RESPECT. That's 1800 737 732.
Harley Reid on full show, unbelievable!
The AFL might be a national competition, but that doesn't mean fans in the sports heartland of Melbourne give a stuff about what happens to the 2 teams from WA. But that has all changed this year, and it's because of one player, Harley Reid. Selected by West Coast with the first pick in the last AFL draft, Reid has quickly emerged as one of the most exciting players in the game. Not only has he single-handedly galvanised an Eagles fan base that has become moribund after years of failure, he's made West Coast games must-see TV on the East Coast. That's unprecedented, which is why leading AFL journalist Mark Robinson has said today that Harley Reid is the best first-year player we've ever seen in the modern era. He's an unbackable favourite to win the Rising Star Award this season and at 19 years old has the footy world at his feet. So what price would you put on the Harley Reid brand? Here to answer that question is celebrity manager and PR mastermind, the one and only Max Markson. Max, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And so when we're talking about Harley Reid, he's burst onto the scene with so much excitement. You know, it's reminiscent of a Buddy Franklin or some of these other players from the past who have really grabbed the sport by the scruff of the neck and forced everybody to pay attention to them. What do you think is the value of Harley Reid as a brand, as a commodity to sports brands and other people that might look to him as an ambassador?
Look, at the age of 19, he's worth $10 million easily. As the years go past, he'll just keep on earning money, and it's not just on the field, but he'll have so much commercial spread, TV commercials. And I just got this list of things I think he could do, and that's just off the top of my head. There'll be a car company will want to use him, and maybe it'll be a dealership which he'll actually be able to get to and start his career off with that. There'll be food companies, whether it's Woolworths or Coles or something like that, he'll have multi-year deals on these sort of things, and exercise, clothing, boots. It's just, it goes on and on. I can even see Channel 7 signing him up and getting him as doing columns and things like that. It's just worth so much money to him.
It does feel like the sky's the limit for Harley at the moment. Over the years, have you seen things change in terms of, the opportunities given to professional sports stars, the types of products that they're endorsing, and the money that can be made?
Look, I think it used to be just a deal by deal, but nowadays it's long-term products and it's long-term relationships with 5 or 6 companies, and that's the way it goes. It's the way of the future. People want to be with somebody that was going to be with them for many years to come.
And these types of opportunities, these types of relationships are not always without risk. You've got a case in America, Tom Brady, the NFL greatest of all time, the GOAT. He got into bed with a crypto company that went belly up and cost him personally millions of dollars and many other people who invested in it. Is there a risk if you're Harley Reid that you jump into bed with the wrong brand? You start a relationship that ultimately ends up hurting his own brand?
Look, there might be mistakes made, but along the way, there's big. You go with bigger companies, which are more reputable companies, and that's the way you do it. And for him, he can do whatever he wants. I mean, if it's a telephone company, you want to go with a Telstra or an Optus. If it's a bank, there's another. You go with major companies. You might have a mining ambassadorship. You just don't know what it's going to be and what it's going to be for him, and it's 5-year deals. It's long-term relationships with major companies.
And so for someone like you who manages celebrities, how fickle is the sports world? Because it's so dependent on on-field performance. If you have a bad season or if you get a catastrophic injury, which we wouldn't wish on anybody, it can all be over very quickly. Is that something that, from your perspective, representing these types of clients, it factors into your decision-making?
Yeah, it does, but you can't control if they're going to get an injury or if something's going to go wrong for them. But if it's a relationship that is a good relationship with someone, then they'll be with you that whole time. So even if it's an injury, you'll survive through it and you'll become an ambassador for them afterwards.
One thing that we're already talking about in this first season for Harley Reid is the pressure on the kid, because he's come to a club in West Coast who've been terrible for years, and he's seen as their shining hope, lead them out of the darkness, and the pressure that will put on a 19-year-old. When you're talking about some big sort of long-term relationships with huge companies, do you think that adds pressure?
I'm sure it adds pressure, but I mean, it's part of the game. He's become a star, and he'll just take it the way, he'll go up and down and up and down. I mean, it happens to everybody. But if you're respectful of, and your major concern is your sport, then that will be winning it all the way through. Your sport commitment.
Yep, I think that's right. Good advice for Harley Reid indeed. And it'll be fascinating to watch how his career plays out over, conceivably, another 10 years to come and many, many millions of dollars in his bank account. Thank you very much for your insights, celebrity manager and PR guru Max Markson. Always great to chat to you.
My pleasure.
Munster's there to help with defence. Oh, no! He's done. Oh, that groin's gone. He's tore it. Oh, that's terrible. Munster is, he can't get off the ground.
It's news that every Origin fan fears, an injury just before the series kickoff. And over the weekend, that news was about Queensland's Origin star, Cam Munster. Here with more is sports editor at The Nightly, Ben McClellan. Ben, what's the bad news on Munster?
Yeah, look, he's aggravated what was an ongoing groin injury, which he's been carrying. As some of our listeners probably know, he had a sort of inadvertent fall in a shower while he was in Fiji, which meant he wasn't able to start the season with the Storm. He then returned, played on the weekend, aggravated his groin, and he pulled up a little lame And then, Munster, being the workhorse that he is, he then went in for a tackle against the Eels and then just was writhing in pain, limped off the field. So they're waiting. We're still waiting on the results of scans to see how serious injury will be. But I'd be surprised if he plays in Origin 1, which is on June 5, and the Origin teams get picked at the end of the next round. So that's Sunday night and Monday night next week. So if you're Billy Slater, obviously he works pretty closely with the Melbourne Storm outside of his job as the Queensland coach. So he'd be he'd have a pretty good line to Cameron, and I guess really putting it to him, whether he thinks he'll be able to play. And the other factor in this is if Munster undergoes surgery, then he's most likely out for a couple of months, and that could potentially put him out for the season. So so there's a lot of factors. A lot of factors in play, as they say. But, and I guess the talk recently has been who would replace Nathan Cleary as halfback for New South Wales, and now we're turning to who will replace Cameron Munster as 5'8" for Queensland.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating. And someone who might have some ideas about that is our nightly columnist, Spud Carroll, former New South Wales great, rugby league great, who has given his suggestions for potential Origin selections. And what did you take away from his column in the nightly today?
Yeah. Look, some very interesting insights from Spud. If anyone knows about hitting up the ball and leading with your head, then it's Spud Carroll. So he's made a pretty bold call, as he sort of called it. He wants to see Tom Hazelton in the side. So that's a name a lot of listeners wouldn't be too familiar with. So he's one of the Sharks front rowers. Now, the Sharks are obviously top of the pops at the moment. They beat the Storm last week, weekend before last, and then in Magic Round, they played a great game against the Roosters, and he actually scored the match-winning try. So Spud's saying he would be a great addition to the Blues bench. As you know, in Origin, whether you start in the front row or whether you start on the bench is neither here nor there, because there's obviously quite a high turnover in terms of interchanges, and that's where they mostly get used. So he wants to see Tom Hazelton in the team. He's also saying, despite Joseph Sulai wanting to play rugby next year, he'd like to see him potentially get picked. And he's also calling on Zach Lomax getting a run with the Blues. So Zach, who's leaving the Dragons to go over to the Eels, he's obviously had a stellar season, so he's looking for him to be in the team as well. So some pretty interesting calls. And just on Queensland, he wants to see Ezra Mann come in for Munster.
Yeah, not a bad call. The Tom Hazelton thing, I can't back that as a Queenslander. If there's one thing I hate, it's when the Maroons are getting a bit tired in defence and then New South Wales brings on some kind of freakish man monster who just hits the ball up so hard as Hazelton does. He's nearly 2 metres tall, weighs 120 kilos. No, that's the last thing I want to see. So I can't back Spud's call on that.
All
but
right, you tell Spud that yourself.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm about as biased as him, though, I think, in the opposite direction. Fantastic. Not so fantastic for Cam Munster. No. We'll wait and see what the news is on that. Thanks, as always, for keeping us up to date on the sports world. Sports editor at The Nightly, Ben McClellan. And that, folks, is today's show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join me again tomorrow on The Nightly 5.
The Nightly 5 podcast is brought to you by 7 West Media. For all these stories and more, head to thenightly.com.au, helping you get in front of tomorrow.